Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. So it is February 3rd, 2022, episode 65 of the workshop podcast. Wow, we've been doing this 65 times now, which is kind of cool. And it's episode 9 of the ongoing Repairedness series. Just got to get a few quick pieces of housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll jump right in. I got a bunch of notes for you tonight, so it should be a real good episode. So I've been hearing from a bunch of people that I should be on Rumble, or at least it seems to be another place to be for freedom-minded, loving folks. So I launched a Rumble channel. If you're looking for the link, it'll be in the description below. Run by there, check it out, and subscribe if you're there. Now, got a question for you. If you're not following PBN, the Prepper Broadcast Network, how come? There is so much good content. I guess the only reason you might not want to is because there's so much good content over there that you might be worried you're going to miss out on some. But this week was awesome. We had Ryan and Colin did an incredible episode on the Next Generation podcast talking about underground bunkers, how to find them, where to be, the whole works. It was awesome. It was great. And who else did we have? Matter of Facts guys did an awesome podcast on AKs, everything there is to know about AKs. And James, our intrepid commander, he did a really, really good episode on how the battle for freedom is generational and it never, ever ends. So it was great. Take a minute, check it out. And then I had Ryan. Some of you guys would know, of course, but I had Ryan from the Next Generation podcast on my Sunday night live stream. We had an awesome time. And number 3, the best one. This is my second annual Groundhog Day Prepper Gear giveaway. I don't know why I love Groundhog Day so much, but I do. There's just something about it. Anyway, so run by toolmantim.co to enter. We got a bunch of cool prizes. We got an American-made can opener, a deluxe tire plug kit. We have a Wi-Fi freezer alarm, a Lansky knife sharpening kit, and a bunch of other, and at least one other prize mixed in there. The draw is going to be on February 14th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. There's enter the draw, you get one free draw, and then there's ways to earn 4 more. So yes, and James, if you can hear me over in Element, just let me know if everything's coming through good. Did a bunch of tests this week to make sure. Oh, and anybody who's listening on PBN, we had a technical difficulty last week. My Thursday show came through so quiet you could barely hear it. I had to turn the audio all the way up, even after doing some tests. So looks like we got everything out there. Yes. PBN. Hey, James, how are you, man? It is great to see you, buddy. So yeah, anyway, so those are the announcements. We're out of the way. Let's move on, guys. It's great. So tonight we are going to talk about the armor of our home, the thing that keeps the outside out and the inside in. Basically, what protects our last line of defense, our bug-in location. So, like I said, it's the armor. It protects us. It helps keep, if we don't have the exterior in good shape, it could end up turning, an everyday common natural, I hate to use the word disaster, but it can end up turning a reason to bug in into a reason to bug out. And we all know that the worst time to bug out is when you are in the middle of a disaster or any kind of weather event. So anyway, driving around the countryside here in Alberta, and my buddy Chris Dixon, I'm sure he sees them all the time. There's abandoned farmhouses everywhere. Has a lot to do with the amalgamation of farmland, bigger and bigger companies buying, then people moving off or families dying out. So they end up leaving the farmhouses behind, right? And there's nothing worse for a home than to not be lived in, because when you live in it, if you have a draft, you fix it. If you have a leak in the roof, you fix it. But when these houses are sitting empty out in the prairies, first thing happens, a shingle blows off. Then the rain gets in. And then, it doesn't take that long. And that little chink in the armor, the rain gets through, it starts rotting. Or, how about if you're in your home in the middle of summer and you find everything's humid, you're going to open a window and ventilate it. However, these empty houses or these houses that aren't taken care of, doesn't happen. They end up rotting from the inside out. So it just goes to show that just a little bit of regular routine maintenance is really all it takes. back home where I grew up in Nova Scotia, I used to have this aunt. Her name was Connie, and she was blind. I don't even think she was my aunt. We just called her my aunt. She lived in Massachusetts, and it was always cool when she came home. She'd come home about once a year, and they had this little tiny, I don't say tiny, it's like a 2-story lime green cottage that they would come home, her and her husband, Vinyl, just like Vinyl Records. I don't know. Anyway, they would come home and they would stay 2 or 3 weeks in this little cottage. We'd go and visit them, and they would do the maintenance on it and everything. And I bet you she hasn't been home in 20 years. I'm sure she's long past at this point. And the house, it just, every year they came home and they fixed things, everything stayed good. But then as soon as they stopped coming, a shingle would blow off. Then a little bit of rain would go in. Now, I mean, this has been 20 years, and I know stuff happens fast. But when I was home at Christmas time, the roof has completely caved in, and there's shrubbery growing in through, well, the windows aren't even there anymore, just what holes used to be there. Another 10 years, and the entire house is going to collapse. So I know this is extreme, and it's kind of interesting, whatever, but that's the whole way it goes. One little thing gets ignored and doesn't get looked after, and then it becomes worse and worse and worse. So, I always say, always fix a loose screw, because if you have a loose screw in a hinge, the first thing that happens is the screw falls out. Then the hinge gets loose. Then the hinge falls out. Then the door falls out, and you end up with a broken door frame. And all that could have been fixed by just tightening up a single screw the first time you noticed it was loose. A maintenance mindset. That's what we're looking for. And you know what? What would this be? Confession time? Because, and I always use this as an excuse, but I'm always out working in the winter, and my snowblower, I noticed there was a crack up in the deflector shield, and I said, I got to fix that. I got to put tape over it, just put a little piece of cardboard or something just to keep it so it doesn't get any worse. And then I got lazy and I didn't do it. And then a couple days ago, I was out blowing snow, and whoom, rock went right through it. And now, instead of a little crack, I got a hole this big. And so now I had to order a new part. So do as I say, not as I do. But yes, always fix a loose screw, because that is the key to staying on top of home maintenance. And especially in this instance, of course, the exterior of the home, like I said, is the armor of the home, and it's going to keep all of those outdoor elements out. So let's start out. We're going to look at the 6 steps for protecting the exterior of your home. These are all simple. We've talked about this kind of stuff in the past. But number 1, routine seasonal inspections. And this is simple. And I don't mean like, an 8-page itemized checklist or anything. I just mean, every season, if you want to, the 21st of the month when the season changes, do a walk around your property, do a walk around your house, look up at the roof, say, oh, okay, there's a shingle missing. It's time to fix it when it gets a little bit warmer, Martinson family says older homes were often not built as well, so a small issue gets huge fast. That's a really good point. We always think about old homes having really good bones because, the structure of them, the framing tended to hold up really well. But you're right. A lot of the older homes, were made by unskilled people or, everybody, they just scab things together. And you're right. Absolutely. There was times when those older homes, they just kind of fall apart a little bit quicker, So like I said, step 1, we're going to do routine seasonal inspections. And that's simple. Like I said, just paying attention, or anytime you're out in the backyard or walking around. The winter, it gets a little harder because things are covered in snow, but step number 2, pay attention, especially after winter, because that's when the worst of the damage happens. That's when everything was covered in snow and ice gets up underneath your, can back up from your gutters, get up underneath the edges of your shingles, can peel things back, can start making rot in your fascia boards, down underneath your sill, just all of that. So, I say do an inspection seasonally, but if you choose to only do it once, do it right after winter and spring, because that's when the most stuff is set for the longest time without being looked at, with extra snow load, with extra water, with extra heaving from the ice, all of that. So, routine seasonal inspections and a special attention after winter. And then number 3, like I said, fix minor issues before they become major. I don't know how many times for how many years when Becky and I were first married that I would literally, this never always fix a loose screw came from a door down Digby Neck in the old house that was like 130 years old. It was our bathroom door. And I looked at that damn thing every day for 6 months. And every day it got a little looser and a little looser until the gosh darn door fell right off the hinge. And I could have simply fixed it by just getting a hinge screw anchor, or maybe some, you can put toothpicks in there, or you can drive a golf tee in there, crack it off. There's 100 fixes. A zip tie, stick that in there. And I was just lazy about it. So always do it. Like I said, with the snowblower, you know. Oh, wow. Martinson family says Flin Flon, Manitoba, for example, still has a lot of houses built of shipping boxes after the war. That sounds like a rather interesting YouTube video that could be made. I like that. I got to look into that. That's really cool. Okay, so number 4, have a plan for the most likely disasters. We talk about this across the board in preparedness, but you know, that's part of the reason I had the poll tonight. Which of the main disasters are you most likely to end up having an issue with? So have a plan in place ahead of time. You know, if plow winds are an issue, have a plan for plow winds. You know, if a tornado is an issue, have a plan for tornado. You know, if you live in you know, an area where hail comes through all the time, have a plan in place for all of that. It's all just, it's important. And if you have a plan ahead of time, then you don't panic. Like the story Chris talked about a few weeks ago there with the lady who was absolutely panicked because there was a wildfire coming, even though it wasn't anywhere near her, because she didn't have a plan. She was just trying anything. And a lot of times that's when we get ourselves in trouble. Now, a plan's great, but if you don't have the materials, what good is a plan, right? So, for instance, things like plywood on hand to cover your windows in case of a storm, or extra shingles. We're going to get into that, but have the materials in place. Step 5, have the materials in place so that you can respond to whatever disaster it is using the plan you had in place. And then this is Blue Tarp, Snail Creek Homestead. Once again, peeking at my notes, guys. But yes, tarps are essential. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. Now, here's the one that a lot of people fail to do. Number 6, do a post-incident assessment. That helps you fill in the gaps in your preps. Because, and this is an area that a lot of us, we don't like to admit when we screw up, right? Not a big deal. We just don't. So the thing about it is there's no shame in being unprepared. The only shame is in not learning from that unpreparedness. That, you know, when my wife and I first started camping, we went camping and I kept a list of all the things I needed that I didn't think of. I thought I would need, and I didn't. And then you fill in your gaps and you go from there. And that's what happens after a hailstorm. And you're like, well, you know what? If I knew that was coming, maybe I could have parked my truck on the east side of the garage so that the prevailing winds would be sheltered from it, you know, that kind of stuff. So just have a post-incident assessment and just say, oh, what could I have done better? What did I screw up? What can I fix for next time? What materials can I have on hand? And like I said, there's no shame in being unprepared for something if you didn't see it coming. It's just the only shame comes in if we don't learn from our mistakes, right? So anyway, so then we're going to talk about the 4 main weather systems that really test our home's armor. And there's probably 5. Well, there is 5, but I didn't include fire. It's kind of its own beast, and we are going to deal with each one of these in their own individual episode. We did the snow one already, but the main 4 we're going to talk about tonight, and if you guys remember Captain Planet, it kind of sounds like that. But wind, rain, snow, and hail. I don't think there was hail in Captain Planet, but anyway. So first one we're going to deal with is wind. And, you know, this is something you're going to check ahead of time and you're going to check after the time. But you're going to make sure your chimney caps are in place and secure, right? Caps to your vents are in place and secure, because that's the kind of shit that ends up blowing away. It's the type of thing that you end up finding in your neighbor's backyard that went through their beautiful gazebo because you didn't have it secured, right? You're going to take a walk around, look for missing pieces of siding or loose pieces of siding, because that's the type of thing that might not be a big deal until you get a real bad wind come through. And then all of a sudden the first piece of siding goes and then the second piece. And quick tip, it's almost always the top piece of siding, because that is the piece that you end up trimming that doesn't have any nails to hold it into place. It just friction fits up in there. And Joseph Mills, I don't think he's in here yet tonight, but he gave me a good tip last summer. He said, put a bead of caulking up in your undersill trim and then push it up into place, because once that piece comes out, every missing trampolines. Oh yes. Once that top piece comes out, then everything else is exposed. The wind can get behind it, and more so, the rain can get behind it. So keep an eye on that top piece. That tends to be, I think in the last couple summers, I've replaced 3 or 4 pieces for people, and that was always the piece that blew out. So keep an eye on that. Check for your proper weather stripping around your doors, because that's when you're going to find the drafts. And the best time to check for a draft is when the damn wind is blowing. Just go around. Sometimes you can just kind of walk around, put your hand up and run it around, and then you'll feel it. So, hey, we got Sunnyland Camper in here tonight. Nice to see you, sir. And and then also make sure all your windows are operating properly. And some people are absolutely blown away. But Ted says to make sure you cut and remove all your coconuts, and make sure that all your local iguanas are secure and tied down to their trees so they can't blow out. That's very important in Florida as well. You got to watch out for falling iguanas. It's an issue. And then check your crank windows and that kind of stuff. A lot of people think when the hardware on a window is broken, that is it. You can't fix it. You need a new window. That couldn't be any further from the truth. A lot of that hardware is made by one company or a couple of companies. And if you can get the numbers off the arm and that sort of thing, it's super easy to replace. Just take a few minutes, watch a couple of videos, order the right stuff, and you can fix it. Sunnyland Camper says, Bic lighter works great to find drafts. Yes, it does. Or incense too, but yes, that's a great idea. Last summer, and here's a short little thing. Keep your shit secure. Because last summer, I took my daughter over to swimming lessons, and it was the most calm day that we'd had in a while. And all of a sudden, the wind just went crazy. Use gas leaks too, yeah. And then all of a sudden, the wind just went crazy. And the locals told me they call it a plow wind. And I guess that can kind of be like the leading. Now, if I have this wrong, somebody correct me, but the leading edge of a tornado, we didn't end up having one, but we had like 6 to 8 inch branches down all across town. And I went back, and I'd been in the middle of putting up siding, and I had half a lift of styrofoam in the back of my dump truck, and I didn't secure it. So I came home to styrofoam all over my yard. Now that's just something simple. It's not going to wreck anything, but if you have the wrong thing that isn't secure for a long period of time, you can end up, having a liability kind of issue, right? So Ted says more people die from coconuts down here. Let's bring that up. More people die from coconuts down here than die from lightning, and we're the lightning capital of the states. That is insane. That sounds like a problem that Gilligan's Island would have had. Anyway. Now rain, that's the next one we're going to deal with. And the simplest thing, microbursts make a heck of a mess down here. I think that's what we had here, Chris, or something similar. It was just miserable. It's the worst one I've seen. Anyway, I've got a lot of pictures, and it was kind of fun cleaning up. No like serious damage, but it came through fast and hard. So rain, that's the next one. Keep your gutters free and flowing. And you guys know I harp on keeping your gutters clean, or as we call them up here, eaves troughs. But keep them clean. And especially in the fall, that's when all the leaves and everything get in there. There seems to be around here about a 2-week window where all the leaves have fallen, and it hasn't gotten so cold that everything's frozen to a massive pile of mud and leaves and ice. So get them clean before winter gets here, so that as the snow melts, it's going to run off. Now, if you've got those like underground, some people have them, the downspout comes down and then goes into a pipe underground. Make sure you fish that out. Make sure it's good and clean and there's nothing obstructing it, because the last thing you want is for something to freeze or get clogged in there and then back up and make a huge mess for you. Now, I had to look into this because I've never had one of these on my home, but if you live in a heavy lightning area, like Ted said, maybe consider installing a lightning rod. Now, I looked on some insurance companies' pages and stuff, and they said they recommend to have a lightning rod if you have trees that are taller than your house within 10 feet of the house, or if your house is exceptionally tall and you live in a heavy lightning area. I just thought it was kind of interesting. But yeah, if you live in a place where lightning is a serious issue, then maybe why not install a lightning rod? I'm sure there's local experts that can help you. But yeah, and then when it's raining, here's another thought. Roof leaks are rarely ever where you think they are. So if you see the water coming through on the inside, that's a good place to start because you know the leak isn't any lower on the roof. But what you're going to do is you're going to find it and then you're going to follow it up and try to find where it stops being wet in the underside if you can find it. But a lot of times water will, come in up here and then work its way down, kind of snake around right to the bottom. And it can be a hell of a time trying to find where the actual leak is. So just remember that. Now, snow. I always love talking about snow and winter weather. Here's one thing. A lot of times, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but outswing doors are great because the harder the wind blows, the tighter the door seals, which is great, except when you're dealing with snow. And when you get a huge, heavy pile of snow outside of an outswing door, it can be rather difficult to get out of your home. So just something to think about. Have a plan. If you're building a house, maybe have one outswing door facing the prevailing winds and then have an in-swing door on the other side, something like that. You never know, right? Also, when you're using your snowblower, and this, these are all kind of random thoughts about this stuff, but it's things I've ran into. Make sure you point your snowblower away from the house so that you're not picking up gravel from the driveway, kicking it up on the house, putting holes in your siding. One time in high school, it was a cold winter's day. And for some reason, I thought I was going to be, I don't know, Wayne Gretzky or something. And I had a tennis ball and I picked it up. I threw it in the air and I decided I was going to swing and hit it with a hockey stick, except I missed and put a great big chunk out of the siding. So never underestimate how brittle vinyl siding can be in the winter. And that's why don't ever point. I know it should go without saying, but sometimes we get, frustrated with the cold and the snow and that kind of stuff. But just remember, be cognizant of which way you're pointing your snowblower. Sometimes I even do it. All of a sudden I'll be going along and I'll be like, shoot, I'm shooting that in the street. And I forgot to flip it around. So just pay attention, Make sure you keep snow away from your AC units, your dryer vents, your electrical. I've got an electrical box on the outside of the house where I can feed in my generator. I've got another one next to my AC unit. So just keep an eye on those. You don't want any moisture getting in there, causing condensation, corrosion, or, a short or something like that, right? Now, you guys know whenever I put these episodes together, I always like to look up some interesting facts, things like that. So I asked everybody, and if you didn't see this, I had a pinned post at the beginning there, but I just asked what the largest piece of hail you've ever seen land in your local area. It's always fun because people love to talk about that. But I looked it up, and apparently, hey, there's Chicken Hawk. I thought you were coming into, he was going to come in and harass us tonight. So classifications of hail. There's really three. I mean, there's four if you talk about just the little tiny ones, but they basically said moderate hail for insurance purposes is golf ball size. Severe is billiard ball or pool ball size, and very severe is baseball, hardball size, and up. I would not want to get hit by one of those. I always think about, I think it was the day after tomorrow when all the weather started going crazy. I think it was over in Japan or one of the Oriental countries, and the nasty hail just come down and started decimating people and cars and everything. So it's, yeah, I mean, I know that's a little extreme, but you would never want to get caught out in it. But hail most typically from May to September, the Midwest being the most common, and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and most of Texas are in what is considered the extreme area. Just something to think about. Okay. And Ted says by code down here, all doors must be, I think you mean outswing since Hurricane Andrew. That makes sense. Okay. So here's a quick fact for you guys. Largest hailstone ever landed in the United States was in Vivian, South Dakota, and it was 8 inches in diameter, 19 inches around, and it weighed a whopping 2 pounds. I don't think I'd want to have a 2-pound rock falling on me from the clouds, but anyway, just something to think about. And I started looking around, and when they're that big, they can literally go through your shingles, your roof sheathing, down through your trusses, and down through your interior walls. This one lady had a picture of where it had come right down through her roof and had landed right in her living room. So yeah, to me, that's just insane. Absolutely. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be out in it, right? But a couple of things. So, we always talk about existing homes, ones we live in, ones we buy and renovate. But a couple of things I got thinking about is, if you're building something new, a few things you can think about. Consider asphalt shingles if you live in hail country, because here in Alberta, every time there is a hailstorm, there is a metric shit ton of insurance claims on metal roofing, because nobody wants metal roofing with all the little dings and dents in it, right? So now, if you do use metal roofing, reinforce behind it if you live in hail country, 2-inch high density foam, something like that. And when your walls are facing, the prevailing wind, so here it's the westerly winds, try to minimize large, uninterrupted, hey, I got that word out without tripping over it, uninterrupted panes of glass. So maybe use smaller individual panes, or have these, my wife and I like to call them zombie shutters, but they're those pull down storm shutters. They're pretty common here for people who do have picture windows on the west side. And they just, yeah, Chicken Hawk says it sounds like the meteor Joe Dirt found. I think it was, actually. But yeah, have some storm shutters if you need to, just that kind of stuff. Keep an eye on the forecast, guys. Like, it's simple. Just, most of us do. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but if other people are listening to this, it's just something, especially when you're in bad weather time of the year, just pay attention. Always be looking ahead 2 or 3 days on the forecast and say, oh, okay, you know what? There's a chance for a weird system coming up here. I just need to pay a little more attention and, be ready for it, right? But also, pay attention, like when the plow winds, I didn't know it was coming, but all of a sudden the wind started getting strong, obviously, but the sky turned kind of a purpley dark color, which isn't good. So sometimes you might have a minute, 5 minutes notice, but pay attention to what comes before that kind of weather, just to make sure. Have a place to park your vehicle. So my plan here is, with the old vehicles, I'm not so worried about it, but with the new Ram, I have a way, I roll it up right next to the east side of my garage, and it basically will keep it from getting the worst of the damage. It may not fix it completely, but that's the best I can do right now. Have a good night, Amy. Thanks for dropping by. Barn chores call, I understand. Well, except I don't, live with a barn anymore, but okay. And then the other one, of course, and I know not everybody thinks about this, but look out for your animals. If you got a dog tied up out back, bring the damn dog in. Look for your cats are pretty resilient, but just think about your wildlife when hail's coming, right? That's all. Simple, and just look out for them. My poor Maisie, you guys know Maisie. She's my boss, my supervisor. I had to take her to the vet today, and she had a couple of teeth in the back of her mouth that had to be pulled. She's only 3 years old, and she's kind of pissed at me. So, anyway. Now, we're going to talk about the 7 exterior parts that make up the whole. So the 7 mini systems that make up the entire Armour set of the outside of the home. We got gutters. Well, we can call it gutters and drainage. That's one. We got siding, or, whatever is on the outside of the home. We got windows. We got doors. And we got vents, which are, we can say vents, dryer vents, your vent pipe on the roof and your chimneys. Then you get your foundation and you get your roof. So those are the 7. We're going to take a quick look at each one. Hey, Brian, how are you? Says, can I answer all of the above for the weather question? Absolutely. Yes. If you live in one of those crazy areas, go for it. So first off, we're going to look at the roof, because that seems to be the one everybody loves. But don't take unnecessary risks. So if the weather's already shit, don't climb on the roof, and don't end up being up like I got reading through some of these. If you guys ever read the Darwin Awards, well, these 2 idiots decided they were going to go up on the roof, and they thought, we better tie off to something. So they tied off to the tree that was near the house, except they tied off only 4 feet off the ground. And then they tied off to each other. And so you can imagine where that ended up. Just, you use your imagination, right? But in the wintertime, people call me quite often and they say, Tim, will you go on the roof and shovel off the roof? Nope, I don't go on a roof in the wintertime. just not worth it to me. But I do have a roof rake. So if you end up living in heavy snow country, get yourself a roof rake. Mine is three 6-foot sections long. So we're 18 feet. So I can get up about 12 to 14 feet up on from the eaves and just pull as much of that snow off. Even if you can get some of it off, it's going to end up saving your roof a lot. Pay attention, especially to the south facing of your roof, because those are the ones, well, for us in the northern hemisphere, that's the area that bakes. It's the area that sits there, 24/7, but year round, getting all that UV radiation. And a lot of times you end up having to replace the south facing shingles more often than the north facing. So pay attention to them. And don't let things get too bad. I've got a house that I've looked after for a few years. It has a low slope roof. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I've mentioned to the homeowners that, it needs to be replaced. Those shingles are getting worse and worse. And now it's to the point where every time the wind blows, they got tabs in their roof, in their yard. So just pay attention to that kind of stuff. Look at it. If you have to go on the roof, and if you're walking on the roof and you're crunching through shingles, there's a good chance things need to be replaced, right? And if you're on the roof, one of the safest places to tie off to is a chimney. If it's a brick chimney, I wouldn't necessarily tie off to one of those Sentinel metal chimneys, but now here we are. We'll go back up. We talked about Snail Creek Homestead earlier, said blue tarp. And if there's one thing to keep on hand, well, there's a few things, but for a roof is have a tarp and get yourself as big a tarp as you can handle, something that'll at least cover a quarter of your entire roof. And then maybe, chances are you're not going to have to tarp the entire house, but if you had a couple of those, at least you could cover half. So learn how to tarp off a roof. And this is something that not everybody knows, and it's not necessarily easy, but go along the edges, put a 2x4 down, roll it over 2 or 3 times on the tarp, and then put some roofing nails through it, and then secure that 2x4 to the roof, then pull your tarp all the way across, stretch it out, and then repeat the process on the other side. And then you really should go up the edges with some strapping and nail that down as well. Because if you don't, first thing, one little gust of wind gets in underneath that tarp and all hell breaks loose and you're a mess. So just watch a few videos on how to tarp off a roof, because it could save you a ton of headache. And again, don't try to tarp it off when it's raining, when it's blowing, because you're going to have a bad day. And you could end up really seriously hurting yourself. But keep a few bundles of shingles or a bundle of shingles on hand, because what's going to happen is down the road, you're not going to be able to replace the right color. So have something that's very, if you lose a couple of shingles, learn how to slide them in under, nail them, keep a little extra roofing tar on hand, keep some extra roofing nails on hand, have a good sturdy ladder. Spend money on a ladder. What do they say? That a man should never skimp out on anything that separates him from the ground. And a ladder is one of those things. A bed's another. I'm not sure I'm worried about a casket, but shoes, tires on a vehicle, anything that separates you from the ground, don't skimp out on it, because you're going to have a bad day if you do. Windows are next. So we'll deal with them. Like I talked about a little earlier, storm shutters. If you live in hail country, consider getting yourself some storm shutters, or make your wife a nice set of decorative wooden shutters that also double as zombie shutters. So if the zombies, if the hail comes, you can just close them, lock them up, and pretend like it never happened, like Night of the Living Dead, right? We just want to board up the windows, and neighbors are none the wiser. Urban camouflage, right? They're nice, pretty, with hearts on them or something, but you can also close them in an emergency. Replace the broken latches on windows so they lock properly, so that the wind, can't open them or get behind them or blow them out. Clean out the tracks in the windows. So most modern thermal pane windows have a drain in them, but they can get clogged up. They get that kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, but that black dirt that gets in them from mildew and mold and that kind of stuff. And it can clog those little tiny, if you look on the bottom of most windows, there's a little drain hole there. And that's designed, of course, for any of the water gets down in the track, it'll roll out and down onto the ground instead of backing up into your home. So just keep an eye on that. Once a year, go around with like a wet rag, clean that out, or vacuum it out with an upholstery brush, or a shop vac with those long, narrow tips, just something like that. But keep all the tracks clear in your windows. And you can even, like a spray lithium grease or something like that if you want to make sure your windows slide really well. But just make sure you let the rest of the family know and they don't open the window and slide it so hard it ends up smacking. And Ted says, I don't think zombies can get through our impact windows. No, you're probably right. And that's another thing I forgot to mention tonight. But if any of you guys have ever looked into it, 3M makes this security film. And I think somebody in the community might have mentioned they tested it before. It might have been Brian. I can't remember. But it basically is a peel and stick clear adhesive that goes over a window. So it's good for security, but it can also be at least a safety issue so that, if you have hail that hits it, it's not going to shatter and go everywhere. It might crack, but yeah, it'll be a little safer. So for windows, keep enough, I love having plywood on hand or OSB, chipboard or whatever. So I never need an excuse to keep it on hand, but make sure you have enough on hand to block out your windows in an emergency. Keep some generic weather stripping on hand too. Just go around your windows and see, okay. Oh yeah, Brian says he wants to try it. Yes, I can't remember who that was, but yeah, there's a 3M sticky film. I would love to get my hands on some. They'd make some good videos, but keep some weather stripping on hand for all the windows. Just go around and look. Most of it's that really thin, felty looking stuff. You can usually buy it by the roll. Check Amazon for that kind of stuff, but just have some. You don't need a lot, but it's just going to save you, if you have a real windy time in the wintertime and you're like, oh shoot, the weather stripping's gone. Well, you can just replace it and then hopefully stay just a little bit warmer. Doors. And I could have probably put doors and windows in the same category, but I'm making the outline, so I'm okay with it. But, take a minute and inspect your doors. So make sure they open and close properly. Check the latches, check the knobs, check the hardware. If it needs it, you can, again, I love spray lithium grease or fluid film is probably my favorite. You can use that to make sure everything's working good. Now, if the door is rubbing, so say it's rubbing at the top, right? Take the pin out of the hinge, put a shim up there where it's rubbing so that it gives you an even gap all the way around. Then what you're going to do is you're going to look at that top hinge and you're going to notice that those circles, the place where the hinge pins go in, they're going to be out of line now. So, normally your pin goes down in. So now they're going to be a little bit out of line. So what you do is you're going to take a pair of pliers and you're going to bend them so that they're straight. And then you're going to tap the pin back in. And now your door is going to shut perfect without rubbing. And it's super easy to use or to do, sorry. Okay. Chris says, I put Expel paint protection film on all our windows. Save the RV windows from hail this year. Chris, if you know where I can find that, send me a link or I'll Google it later. But I want to look into that because I think that would be really good. Ted says the film ain't going to keep zombies out. It'll just keep them from getting cut and make them all sticky. That is true. Can you imagine zombies with glass stuck all to their faces because they ended up trying to chew through the 3M security film? That's a pretty good picture. It might be a short video out there for that too. But yeah, so take a minute and look up how to fix a sticking door or a rubbing door because it's worth it. And again, go around the weather stripping and replace all this stuff before it becomes a problem, before it's minus 35 and the wind's blowing 100 miles an hour, right? And also keep a pack of screw anchors on hand. And in a pinch, you can use those white drywall anchors. I've used them too, but there's really nice, they're like a conical shaped red anchor that screws right into where the old screw popped out. And it gives you something nice and new to screw that hinge screw back into and Bob's your uncle. That's all there is to it. So look those up. I got them over on toolmantim.shop. You can check them out there, but I love them. They're great. They're not the cheapest thing in the world, but boy, they're a lot cheaper than having to replace an entire door. Let's just put it at that. But yeah, look up that hack on how to adjust hinges, because to me, when I first saw that, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it's so damn simple. And again, we don't think about it, but a rubbing door, like right at the frame somewhere, it might just be a minor inconvenience at first, but over time, it can literally wreck the door. So it can wreck the hinges, it can wreck the hardware, it can even wreck the frame. So just keep an eye on it and fix it, Now, chimney and vents. So at least once a year, if you've got a brick chimney or an older stainless steel chimney, it's not going to hurt to get your old ladder out, climb up the ladder, take a walk on the roof if you're comfortable with it, and do an inspection. So my dad, he, up until a few years ago, well, it's still up on the house, but up until a few years ago, he used the brick chimney that had been there since the 60s, I think. And I think the chimney was more parging than it was bricks at this point, because the old parging, that's the cement between the bricks and around the bricks and that kind of stuff. It had basically disintegrated. I'm sure the salt air on the East Coast had something to do with it, but it just kept falling out, and Dad would have to replace it. And eventually a couple of bricks come out of the chimney. So a little bit of routine maintenance on a brick chimney can go a long way. Can end up saving you from having to have an entire chimney rebuilt. And that ain't cheap. You know what masons and bricklayers are like. Also, make sure that you have a proper vent cap on there, but not just a rain cap, because everybody thinks, well, the cap's up there to keep water out. Well, that's part of it, but also there's going to be a mesh screening around there, and that's going to keep wildlife out of there. It's going to keep a raccoon from falling down inside, and his last contribution to mankind is to stink up the entire interior of your home, that kind of stuff. Or a poor bird goes down in there and makes a nest, and then you start a fire in the fireplace, and well, you got boiled eggs, right? So just, make sure that kind of stuff is up there and in place. Check your dryer vents, check your stink pipe, as Dad always liked to call it. Just make sure everything is in working order, venting properly, capped properly, whatever it takes, because you just don't want to end up having a bad day. Siding. Like I said, here's a quick tip on siding. We talked about the pieces that tend to fall off the most, but if you need to replace a piece of siding and you can do it, take a piece off of, quick story. I've probably told you this before, but when people used to buy siding from me as well, just like laminate floor, they would come and they would buy, I would always say, buy 10% more, buy 15% more, because when you're cutting, and you're always going to waste some when you're putting it up, right? But everybody always be so happy when they had a full box left over. They'd come back to the store and they'd be all proud. They're like, I need to return this. And I'm like, I'll return it. But I'm telling you, in 5 years, when you need to replace a piece of siding because hail got on it, or your hubby got the barbecue just a little close to the house, you're going to wish you'd have kept it, because I'm not going to be able to find you either the right profile, the right locking profile, or the right color. So keep yourself a box of siding. Now, even if you listen to my advice on that and you keep yourself a piece of siding, it's still not going to be quite the right color, because everything on the house has been outside in the weather for 5 or 6 years. So if you can do it, steal a piece from the back of the house. Chris says, sounds like a salesman. It's true, but I only ever sold people things that they really needed. And this was always something I said. But if you can steal a piece of siding from the back of the house to replace where the piece needs to be replaced, and then put the new piece on the back or in an area that isn't going to be seen as much, because that new siding that's still sitting in the box is going to be a little bit darker than everything else that's out on the front of the house. Just something to think about. Now, foundation. We're making good time tonight, guys. This is great. So take a minute and walk around the inside of your basement and look for any, like, we have a spot on the far side of our house. It's on the north side, that when it rains, water gets in like crazy, and there's an old crack in there. And I've done my best, and take your time, maybe rent a little Hilti jackhammer or something, clean out the crack, and then try to fill it with hydraulic cement so that it's sealed in really, really nice, and then try to seal it with some sort of elastomeric or that kind of stuff. Actually, that's a really good tip. Martinson family says that's why my house is white. Then you don't have to worry about it fading so much, do you? My parents had, do you guys remember color lock siding? It was like this fiberboard siding that had a color kind of built into it a little bit. Well, when I was a kid, before they had vinyl siding put on, you could run your hand along it. When you were done, your whole hand was white. I'm not sure that was super healthy, but anyway, that's another story. But yeah, take a minute and try to fix foundation issues from the interior first. Also, pay attention to the slope of the ground outside of your foundation if there's an area where water's coming in, because sometimes, of course, it's sloped toward the house and you end up having water coming in. And if you were just to take a few minutes and rebuild it and put it up there, you're going to have a better chance of keeping water out. And also make sure your eaves troughs, your gutters, are in good shape. And if you're like me, make sure you get them installed before winter comes, because I hauled all my gutters down last year to do my siding. I did the entire siding, but I never got my gutters back up yet. So they're going up in the spring, but the south side of the house is like an ice rink. Everything comes down because, of course, that's the side that faces the sun. It drips off, it melts off, and it turns to a sheet of ice. And then the process repeats itself 100 times over until you have this great big hump of ice where all the Purolator and UPS and FedEx drivers insist on walking every single time. So I've got to block them off or something. But yes, asbestos slate siding, isn't that special? So yeah, just take your time and do that kind of stuff. And another thing on siding, if you do live in hail territory, hail country, put a good solid foam board behind it, or look at wood siding, look at hardy siding. If you guys have ever looked at hardy siding, that is an engineered cement board. Always something to think about, because it's way less likely that it's going to get damaged when when there's hail, simple as that. So, and like I said, take a minute, make sure eaves troughs are installed, working properly, and your water is draining. And that's really it, guys. Like, when we look at our home, I always say 95% of the time we should be choosing to bug in, because all our shit's there, all our gear's there. Home's where the heart is. It's where we all are going to be, where we all feel the most comfortable. So whenever we're in the middle of a disaster, or even just a straight up stressful situation, it's going to be that much easier to manage if you can stay at home. And the easiest way to ensure you can stay at home is by protecting the interior of that home. It's by building it properly, by having the right armor around our bug-in location, and by making sure there isn't a weak link in that armor so that the outside can end up infiltrating and getting in to our bug-in location, right? Because then all of a sudden, what was a nasty rain and windstorm turns into maybe not a matter of life and death, but a matter of being seriously uncomfortable and needing to go somewhere else. So always fix a loose screw, take a minute, walk around, do an inspection, and just, the regular routine maintenance can save you guys and us and me a whole shit ton of time and trouble in the future. So anyway, a little bit shorter this week. I thought I'd go longer. I had a lot of notes, but I always tell myself to slow down while we're talking, and here we are. But so yeah, that's it for as far as the exterior of the home, the armor of the bug-in location. Martinson family says the house that was here when we bought it had that slate. This house has vinyl. Yeah, that old asbestos is never a good thing, but yeah, it can be a real issue. I love the old color lock siding. It looked good, but it did over time tend to get a little bit of water and it swelled up. And of course you didn't want to chew on it if it was asbestos, right? So hey, if anybody else has any questions or any stories you want to share in the comments, feel free. I'm just going to pass up a couple more pieces of information here, guys, as we kind of come to the end. But so next week, we are going to have the 10th episode of Repairedness. We're going to jump a little bit, and we're going to do something that I'm rather fond of. We're going to talk about small engine maintenance, tips and tricks that I've learned to keep your gear running in tip-top shape for sure. This is Know Your Joe says, we were really fortunate and found a full brick house with a 2-year-old fully hip jointed metal roof. Man, that thing is impenetrable. That's our plan here, is to put a metal roof on. Even though hail can be a bit of an issue, I want a zero maintenance home going forward. So that, Joe, that's awesome. And for some reason, it just reminded me of a story. I don't know if you guys heard about this or read about it, but in Detroit, I guess there's a lot of brick homes, and I guess a lot of abandoned brick homes. And so criminals or ne'er-do-wells or whatever would go in and light them on fire. I'm not exactly sure how how they would light them on fire, but they would burn the interior of the home. So basically all that was left were the bricks, and they'd wait for the firemen to come and knock the house in. Then they'd give it a couple of days until the entire home had cooled down. And then they would go in, because all these bricks are old, really expensive bricks, and they would collect them up, put them on a truck. And from what I understood, they were shipping them down to Ted's territory and making an absolute mint by burning down old houses in Detroit, stealing the bricks, and then shipping them off to somewhere that needed them. So yeah, it's crazy. And Know Your Joe says, I'm looking forward to the small engine info. Yeah, I love talking about it. I've learned a lot, and I want to tell you, it's all been through trial and a lot of error. I'll share with you guys a story next week too about some troubleshooting I did on my snowblower the other day, and how I followed my rules for troubleshooting, even though it always gets a little stressful and gets you you get worked up for a minute, calm down, stop swearing, and then you're like, okay, I need to follow it, right? So thanks, Joe, for the thumbs up. Thanks, Ted, for the thumbs up. Now, if you guys want to follow me, you want to know, our guest on Sunday night this week coming up is Amy. She was in here earlier tonight. Amy Dingman from A Farmer's Kind of Life. She's going to drop by the workshop, and we are going to talk about being brave enough to suck at something in order to do great things. Because I guess that's one of the cures, I guess that's one of the steps towards success, is being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to suck at something new so that you can get better and put out a better product, put out a better content, or whatever it is, be a better handyman, be a better daycare worker, whatever it is, not being scared to suck so that you can get better. Chris Dixon says, fuel, spark, and air, then swear. Absolutely. And Ted says Flex Seal. Yes, that works. So guys, if you are, for those who don't listen on PBN or Prepper Broadcast Network, like I said, why aren't you? You should be. There's some awesome stuff over there. I love the content they put out. But so I'm Thursday night, and if you want to follow up, the next show on PBN is our friend Carl A.D. Brown. His show is called The Strange Truth, and it's always a really lively discussion on Christianity, preparedness, and the best part is it's the news stories no one else wants to talk about, because, well, we don't always have those discussions, and it's a lot of fun. He's a great speaker, a lot of fun to listen to. So drop by, take a minute, and there's some excellent content creators over there. We got Ryan from the Next Generation Podcast, James, as we refer to him as the Intrepid Commander. He has the I Am Liberty, and Dave, the NBC guy, is on there quite often as well. If you're wondering what NBC stands for, it's nuclear, biological, and chemical. He is an absolute treasure trove of knowledge. So drop in, subscribe, give them a listen, give us a listen, because I'm telling you, Prepper Broadcast Network is heading in an awesome direction, and I love them, and I thank James for giving me the opportunity. So anyway, guys, that's it for me this week. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.